Good morning. While the Liberal Party continues to feel the effects of its erratic taxation proposals, Queensland Premier Sir Joh Bjelke-Petersen has supported the tax policy of the Federal National Party. Sir Joh says the document released yesterday by party leader Ian Sinclair is on the right track with its push towards a flat rate tax. Confirmation from the West Australian government last night that the man shot dead by police in the outback on Friday was 26-year-old Joseph Schwab from West Germany. The body was identified with fingerprints flown to Australia. Doctors in Sydney were unable to save the life of a motorcycle policeman who crashed into a parked car at Dee Why last night when his machine skidded in gravel. He was aged 38. Business news on Wall Street, the Dow Jones index was up 13 points on Friday. Gold in Saturday morning Hong Kong trading was up $1.75. The Australian dollar eased a little on Friday. Now, back to the golf. A rowdy demonstration for Prime Minister Hawke as he arrived for a church service in Melbourne last night. Mr. and Mrs. Hawke were hurried through a side door of the Uniting Church as dozens of anti-abortion demonstrators hurled abuse at the Prime Minister. About 1,000 people packed the church for the service to mark its 10th anniversary. Confirmation from the Western Australian government last night that the man shot dead by police on Friday was 26-year-old Joseph Schwab, a West German, who claimed 5 lives in the outback. South Korea beat Australia 5-4 in a penalty shootout last night after the final of the President's Cup ended 1-1. The Detroit Grand Prix was raced this morning in the United States, with the first 3 placings going to Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost. The weather, wet everywhere except for Darwin, which will be fine and 32, and in Sydney, clearing and 18. Now back to the golf. Hopes for an end to a dispute that threatens 12,000 jobs in the motor industry depend on a meeting in Melbourne this morning of workers from a seatbelt making plant. Air safety inspectors are at Bundaberg in southeast Queensland this morning to sift through the wreckage of an air ambulance that crashed yesterday, killing the pilot, a passenger, an ambulance officer and a nurse. Police in Sydney say a motorcycle officer who died after his machine hit a parked car last night was escorting a police rescue boat when he skidded in gravel. He died in Mona Vale Hospital. Continuing their visit to Australia this morning, US Secretary of State George Shultz and Defence Secretary Caspar Weinberger will discuss international trading issues with Trade Minister John Dawkins. In the United States this morning, a win for Brazilian Ayrton Senna in the Detroit Grand Prix and victory for South Korea in the President's Cup soccer final against Australia last night. Now, back to California and the golf. A rowdy demonstration for Prime Minister Hawke as he arrived for a church service in Melbourne last night. Mr. and Mrs. Hawke were hurried through a side door of the Uniting Church as dozens of anti-abortion demonstrators hurled abuse at the Prime Minister. About 1,000 people packed the church for the service to mark its 10th anniversary. Scientific police in Sydney are testing a woman's corset containing 1 kilogram of heroin and left in the toilet of a British Airways jet. A woman was questioned yesterday but released in the afternoon. The Detroit Grand Prix was raced this morning in the United States with the first 3 placings going to Ayrton Senna, Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost. Australian Pat Cash and American Marcel Freeman meet on centre court tonight in the first round of the Wimbledon Tennis Championship. Australian Greg Norman is already back in the clubhouse, having dropped 7 strokes today to finish 12 over the card in the US Open Golf. We return now to live coverage. Here's Ian Maurice. Talks on trade and national security continue today between visiting American Secretary of State George Shultz, Defence Secretary Caspar Weinberger and their Australian counterparts Bill Hayden and Kim Beazley. The 2 United States officials spent yesterday with Prime Minister Hawke, who says he's been given an extensive rundown on disarmament talks between America and the Soviet Union. Resources and Energy Minister Senator Gareth Evans says a petrol price cut brought about by complete deregulation of the Australian oil industry will come into effect on January the 1st next year. Motorists should save $1 a week. 18-year-old Simon Walker remains in a serious condition in hospital after being rescued from the bottom of a cliff last night at Dover Heights in Sydney's eastern suburbs. Australian Robert De Castella last night won the Great North Half Marathon in Newcastle, England. He was disqualified at first for cutting off part of his number because it was too heavy, but was reinstated as winner. Now back to the golf. Here's Ian Maurice.